business of city government, of governance, for over 30 years. I was fortunate enough to be able to graduate from school, undergraduate school, with a degree in education and sociology. My first master's degree was in criminal justice administration, and my second master's degree was in urban planning. I was blessed to work with some wonderful leaders of social services departments in Roanoke and also in Martinsville. In Roanoke as assistant city manager, I worked daily with the director of human services and the director of the social services department. Here in Danville, the gentleman who actually is the division director for social services, Mr. Moody, is extremely qualified and also holds a legal degree. He's an attorney. He's been in the community now, I believe, about 4 years. So the day-to-day operations of the social services department will remain with Mr. Moody. Mr. Moody will, instead of reporting to Ms. Edwards, would be just simply reporting to somebody else. And if it's me, that somebody else, I believe, has a pretty deep background in human services. And all of my years in government have been driven by a real passion for people and for communities. Otherwise, you don't do this.
Okay, Mr. Gilstrap, Mr. Tomer, Mr. Shanks.
Mr. Roll, I got several questions, if you don't mind, Mayor. One is, in all the other governments that you work in, I know you mentioned Roanoke and Martinsville, where was Social Services Department? Was it standalone, or this is pretty unusual that you have a Department of Human Services with this grouping, is that correct? With detention, libraries, and social services group as one department. And I don't want to ask the question for it, but most of the cities I'm aware of, Social Services Department is a standalone department, reports directly to the city manager.
That's pretty standard throughout the Commonwealth.
That's pretty standard throughout the Commonwealth.
Yes, sir.
And I'll ask other city managers of working with other governments, what do the other cities, what groupings do they do with social services? Joe?
I think more often than not it is a freestanding department. But organizations, how you organize functions in a city is not by a book, it's not by a formula. There's a wide variation from city to city. The one thing I would point out about Earl's background that he didn't was that he's had direct experience in total action against poverty in 2 different assignments. So he's worked directly in anti-poverty programs. In the Community Development Department, the Housing and Development Division, it's all about service to moderate and low-income individuals and manages our block grant program. So there is a portion of Community Development Department that is actually focused on the same constituents as social services. But to answer your question directly, there is no rule of thumb on how a city ought to be organized. We have 14 departments, and many would argue that's too many. So we're trying actually to reduce the number of departments, not add to the number of departments.
Mr. Gilstrap, you have more?
I do. I guess it's presently is the Division of Social Services. How large is it? And is it larger than most departments?
We have several small departments, and there are at least 100, 120
or so.
I can look it up. It's probably in the 120 employees.
So that's
It's a very
10% of the
large
workforce
division.
is in that division.
Yeah, more, that it? Mr. Reynolds, before I go to Mr. Tomer and Mr. Shanks, let me just say that I've known you for years, and I have the world of respect for you, okay? But this is not about Mr. Earl Reynolds, okay? It's not about you at all, sir.
Yes, sir.
I've known for a long time, you have 2 master's degrees and beyond. I've known that. I'm very proud of you. I also know that Mr. Moody has a law degree. I've known that. This is not about Mr. Moody, okay? So please understand, my statement stand. We're proud of you, and we're glad you're here. And when I read my statements earlier, I said regardless of their, quote, great competencies, end quote. I said that on the record before you came up. Proud of you, love you. With all due respect, sir, it's not about you. Please understand and respect that. Thank you. Mr. Tomer.
Yes, I have 2 things. First is knowing that the potential of social service being moved into community development. Let's say Mr. Reynolds leaves or retires or isn't with the city any longer. Knowing that, Mr. King, what type of individual will you, if you're looking to replace the role that Mr. Reynolds will have, what type of an individual would you bring? What background would you look for?
I think, as you know, there are